Like many, I was ecstatic to see Brendan Fraser back on the screen. Yeah, he's done The Mummy, yes, he was ripped in George of the Jungle, and yes, he played an asshole politician in Crash. But where I weirdly got attached as a kid was a film called Journey to the Center of the Earth, which is kind of an underrated gem. I think you should watch it. It was an adventure movie, but surprisingly it showed a lot of performance range in Brendan Fraser, and I really appreciated him as an actor. But I noticed that he wasn't in very much. And what he was in was like 10-second cameos. Later, I found out due to some underwhelming roles in some less than stellar films, Brendan Fraser just kind of disappeared. See, the logic of Hollywood investors is, if someone is in a movie and the movie doesn't always do amazingly, then we can't bet on the actor. They don't really look at the actor's performance style and think, well, if he was in a better movie, I mean, sometimes they do, but a lot of times they just write you off. And unfortunately, that's something that happened to Brendan Fraser. That's the business part of show business. By the way, ignore the fact that my hair's out of frame. I'm having a bad hair day. Just ignore it. Okay, anyway, Brendan Fraser had been making a huge comeback on the internet and on social media. There's such universal support for Brendan Fraser right now. And not only can I say that this is a good return for Brendan Fraser, I will say that this is without a doubt his best performance to date. I don't really follow Oscars or Academy Awards, or really any awards other than the Tonys, but I do hope that Brendan Fraser at least gets a nomination. I know he already has for some awards. By the way, I may pronounce his name Fraser. I know it is Fraser. It's a common mistake that many people, including myself, make. Brendan Fraser, like a razor. Okay, before moving any further, let me address the elephant in the room, or the whale in the room. Why am I reviewing this movie? Doesn't seem to fit my channel. I cover theater stuff. I do a lot of videos on that topic and in that arena. And in case you aren't aware, The Whale is actually a stage play originally written by Samuel D. Hunter. I was curious if this was going to be a really close adaptation or they were going to make some changes, but watching the trailers alone and definitely having watched the movie, it is very similar.
I'm sorry.
You say you're sorry again, I am gonna shove a knife right into you.
Go ahead, what's it gonna do? My internal organs are 2 feet in at least.
I'm sorry.
You say you're sorry one more time, I will shove a knife right into you. I swear to God.
Go ahead. What's it gonna do? My internal organs are 2 feet in at least.
Did you ever get the feeling that people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing!
Do you ever get the feeling people are incapable of not caring? People are amazing.
And even if you weren't aware of that going in, just watching it, you can probably tell that it was meant for the stage originally, given that it's set in one place, it's set over a period of 5 days, it's separated by acts. You can kind of see if you were watching a show, the lights would dim and they would do some set rearranging. You can kind of see how it would fit as a play. It is set in one place, except for one scene, which is like kind of a flashback, and yes, that is Sadie Sink's little sister. It only has 5 characters. Charlie, a writing teacher who is slowly eating himself to death due to depression from his partner's death, but he is also the ex-husband to a woman called Mary, who makes a small appearance, and is the father of Ellie, a 17-year-old played by Sadie Sink, who is extremely aggressive, snarky, but very intelligent, but clearly nihilistic and hostile from her lack of friends, and her very rough life of loss. Think Chloe Price from Life is Strange, or perhaps Max Mayfield from Stranger Things, but turned up 10 times. Her role here as Ellie is far less likable than the character of Max, and it's written to be so. But I'll get into later why it is that we kind of like her or see her as redeemable. But yes, it does seem like Sadie Sink has a little bit of a typecast going on, playing these types of roles.
Thank you, King of Sunnyvale, future police chief Nick Good, for rescuing poor, helpless Shady Cider me. How could I ever repay you? Oh, I know, I'll just bat my eyes at you.
Now, in her role in The Whale, some might say Sadie Sink is too good in this. The lines are extreme, even for a bratty teenager. But her delivery just hammers in just how deep in her darkness she is. It would be easy to write her off as just an irredeemable character, but what saves her is Charlie. Yes, Charlie makes her character redeemable. See, the whole theme of this movie and of Charlie's character is his desire for honesty and his respect for sincerity. He hates fake writing styles and fake personalities, people telling you that they are one way and treating you differently, and not living what they preach, basically. So kind of what New Life did to Alan. His boyfriend Alan was part of a church called New Life, and due to religious guilt, Alan took his own life, and this caused Charlie to get into a depression. Ellie definitely has the honest and sincere boxes checked off. She feels like she has nothing to lose. She's already lost her father. She doesn't have any friends, as it's established. So she feels like, why do I have to impress anybody? I'm just gonna be myself, unadulterated. Charlie sees through her brutal exterior and knows that deep down she cares. It's in our trusting of Charlie the character, who I will just say right now is the best thing about this movie, bar none, but that gets us to trust that if he sees something in her, there's something redeemable. That speaks volumes to the character of Charlie, both how he's written and how he's performed by Brendan Fraser. Fraser says so much with his eyes. He doesn't play him snarky or overly witty or funny like he's been played in the past in stage productions, but simply to the text, honest. He never resists the negative energy of the other characters, and he seems completely selfless. He doesn't believe he deserves anything for himself. He gives the most believable, heartfelt, gut-wrenching performance I've seen in a long time. Hong Chow, who plays the friend Liz, who proves that doing your best for your friend sometimes just isn't enough for what your friend needs, as she ends up kind of being an enabler to Charlie's self-destructive behavior. Ty Simpkins as Thomas and Samantha Morton as the shortly on-screen Mary do great in their roles, but their characters are less enticing dramatically than the other three characters. It really is Fraser who steals the show here. The lighting and the brilliant musical score, composed by Rob Simonson, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, portray the isolation and the imprisoning nature of Charlie's situation, even if it is mainly self-imposed. The lack of color, the shaky isolated violin sounds, the underlying strong bass, all give a very strong sense of impending doom. I haven't talked a whole lot about the plot, A, because I'm trying to be spoiler free, and B, because this movie doesn't change a whole lot from the original source material. So I'm not focusing too much on that, I'm focusing more on it as an adaptation. But that said, I think when you do adapt a show meant for the stage onto the screen, there are a few changes that have to happen, and it may not have been done perfectly. Some of the character relationship arcs are where this movie suffers. Without spoiling too much, Ellie takes an action toward the character of Thomas in the final act of the film, and we are told to believe that she had a positive intention, but at no point in the movie did I notice that intention take hold. It felt very malicious from watching it. It was kind of a failure of the show don't tell rule. I had the same problem with the scene between Charlie and Mary, which felt a little bit rushed considering the massive shift that happens in that scene. In general, some plot lines and some characters are just less interesting than others. I think the character of Thomas is probably one of the least interesting, though he is one of the most developed. We learn a lot about him. But any scene that has him that doesn't have Charlie is a little bit less enticing, and I kind of have a hypothesis for this that I'm kind of thinking of on the spot. I think a stage show has more leeway to get into tangential lines of dialogue and character arcs because it's more of an experience, whereas for a film you have to focus on the strong elements of the story, moving the plot forward and kind of keeping the audience entertained, and you're more punished for a scene that's less dramatically enticing. I think the scenes with Ellie and Thomas and the scenes with Thomas and Liz kind of suffer from this. The strongest things about this movie are the relationship between Charlie and Ellie and Charlie and Liz, and even just Charlie's inner self-torture in general. So while you will have some scenes that are less enticing than others, a piece of art does not have to be perfect for it to have merit. And I'm saying all of this as someone who had tears coming down his face to his chin while watching the film. I was very emotionally invested. And yes, that line in the trailer was even more powerful watching it in the movie than it was on the trailer. It's a very powerful movie and I really recommend you watch it. And while I do know it's not perfect, it still has a ton of merit and it's going to have some of the best performances and scenes you've seen in a long time. And I also think it ends perfectly as well. And I highly recommend you watch the movie while also recognizing that the film is not perfect. I don't think the film's going to win Best Film. I mean, we'll see how that line ages, but I think there's a chance that Brendan Fraser can very well win Best Actor. So I hope you appreciated this little review. Let me know what you thought of the film. Keep loving theater. I'll see you next time. But I think a stage show has a little bit more leeway to get into tangential. Going off on a tangent. Tangential.